Hi, welcome to Fiberchats. My name is Irina. I'm the host here, and my guest today is Sheila Anderson from Urban Girl Yarns. Hi,
Hey,
how are you?
I'm doing good.
So I got introduced to you by Tanya's Gray, and she is a huge fan of your yarn. So of course I had to go and look at your yarns. But you've been knitting way before you started playing with yarn, right? How
Oh,
did you
yeah.
learn how to knit? Like, what's your story there?
I started knitting when I was about 8 or 9 years old. Grew up in Chicago, Illinois, and I had a lot of cousins and one sister, and we used to go to the park, the local park, and we would play ball or kickball or whatever, in the park because it was relatively close to the house, and we didn't have to cross any major thoroughfares or streets. Well, one day as I was in the park, I needed to go into what's considered the rec center's admin building to go and get some water and use the bathroom because I was like, I don't want to leave. I don't want to go home because I knew my mother would make me stay in the house. So I ran in the building. When I came out the building, I could hear people down the hallway. It was like a classroom setting because they used to do multiple things in this building. And I sort of peeked in the window because it was a Saturday and usually there's no one in there. It's just open for us to get water and stuff. And I saw what I thought were these old ladies sitting there with these needles. They had desserts and drinks and they were making something with yarn. I didn't know it was called yarn then, but it was these strings and the needles. And the lady looked at me because she saw me peeking in the door and she said, "Would you like to come in?" I was like, "Yes." So I came in and stuff, and she just sort of asked me if I knew anything about knitting. I told her no. Well, long story short, part of it's not good, and I don't want to go into the not good part. But she gave me an application to take back to my mother so that I could get my supplies and learn how to knit. And she said if my mother filled it out, I could come every other Saturday and they would teach me how to knit. Well, that's all it took. I started knitting first and then I learned crochet about, I don't know, 3 or 4 years later. I knitted throughout high school. When I first got in the military, in fact, I was a design major in high school. So I used to do knitting and sewing together and try to, marry the two together and a little bit of crocheting on the edging of a garment that I had designed, but I was always partial to knitting. So I joined the Navy and then I stopped for a while. And then the bug hit me and I started back. And I just have stayed with it ever since.
Right. Well, what is it about knitting that attracted you back then, and what keeps on bringing you back to it?
I think it was the community at first. It was like all these ladies were together socializing it. And they had desserts, as a little kid, I was like, they got desserts. And they offered me some, and I thought that was great. And then it was like, oh, you all are making things. And I just love the aspect of making things. I've always been in one craft or another, whether or not it was cross stitch. Like I said, I was always sewing and designing. I used to be a professional seamstress for about 6 years. My specialty was wedding gowns and prom gowns. I've always liked the construction of things. So I just love the knitting. I love the feel of fiber more so than anything, and it's portable a lot more than my sewing machine and other things would be.
Well, I mean, so how do you go from being a knitter to dabbling in dyeing yarn?
Well, that story was based on life changes. I was in the middle of ending a personal relationship with someone that I was dating, and I had been with them for 10 years, and things weren't going well. Life brings its ups and downs because I'm just am I am who I am. I'm openly gay, and I had a partner that I had had for 10 years, but things were not working out. And through the process of ending it, I was getting sad and depressed and, needed something for me, something that would bring me joy. And I used to go to a Saturday knitting group that there were about 10 of us in this group that were the regulars, and we were always there. If one person was missing, we took care of them. We were our community in the knitting group that we socialized together. Well, when they all knew I was going through stuff, I kept saying, I got to do something that's going to bring me some joy. I was already knitting, and I had decided that I was going to take a weaving class. And I thought I need to challenge my brain and just let it something more creative. Well, the weaving class got canceled due to an issue that they could not control. It was a weather issue. It had a bad storm, and they canceled it. So I kept thinking, what am I going to do? And people started suggesting, Sheila, you should start spinning. And I kept saying, no, I don't like spinning. How do you know? And I was like, I don't want to spin. I just don't want to do it. And then they were like, well, you should take, I forgot what the class is where you have bobbin and something, the loom. And I was like, nope, don't want to do any of that. And I don't want to even take a spinning class. The lady that owned the yarn shop at that time frame, it was called the Knitting Basket here in Richmond. The owner, Uta, kept saying, Sheila, you need to dye yarn. And I kept looking around the store, and I finally told her, so look at all this yarn you got. She had stuff from Miss Babs, from, Mako's and Miles, and just different folks, and all the heavy hitters and brown sheep and colors for days. And I said, why would I want to dye yarn when every color imaginable is here in the store? Well, she kept saying, I'm going to show you why. She said, when I get the opportunity, I will show you why you need to dye yarn. And I said, plus I don't have any skills. I don't know how to do this. We started a knit along as a group, and it might have been one of the Stephen West when he was, in the middle of doing 5 colors for a shawl, and, first the bobbles and all the, the major stuff. And everyone had said we were all going to do this Stephen West shawl together. And I came in that Saturday and people started picking colors off her shelf, some Miss Babs, some this, some that, some Rios. And they were putting the colors together, and they brought them and put them on the table. And then when Sheila, how does this look? And I went, I don't know. This is Sheila. Is this going to look good on me? And I went, no, it's just the wrong color for your complexion. And she was like, well, pick me a different color. So I got up and switched the yellow for green, or blah, whatever, speckle for what have you. Then 2 or 3 other people did it. The yarn owner moved her chair up behind me because we started socializing knitting. And she said, do you see what just happened? And I went, no. She said, I didn't think you got it. She says, Sheila, your color knowledge is phenomenal. She said, you have an eye for color. She said, that's why you need to dye yarn. She said, it's not that there's not colors out there. She said, but it's about understanding the theories of color and the saturations and what applies. She says, and I'm here to tell you, you're smart enough to learn whatever you need. So I went home and started dyeing, and I haven't looked back since.
Were you surprised by that? Like, did you see that coming?
No. I honestly did not see it coming, probably because I was in the middle of ending the relationship, and I just had no knowledge. I had no information. I had never even looked at a video on how people dyed yarn. Right. So that was the first thing I did. Was I went home and I went, okay, Google it is. Google has everything. Let's see what you have. So I started watching a couple people's online videos, and they were dyeing with Easter egg dye. Couple people were showing how to do natural dyes, and I was like, oh no, I live in the city, and I had a small apartment, and I figured I would just do enough for me, just for me. I didn't think it was going to be a business. I didn't have a plan to make it into a business. I said, I'm going to dye enough for me. So after I dyed, I figured out how to order some very basic yarn. I don't even know what the first composition was. It was something offline, might have been from Pro Kim or something when they used to sell just wool. I dyed about 4 skeins, and I realized that the heat resistance, liquid and other things were the composition, and that the Morton and the salt were what held the color together and bound it, and you needed the heat at a certain temperature to bring it up. So I went out and purchased a used microwave, because I was like, I'll microwave it. Put it on my porch, and I microwaved it. Well, I didn't realize how hot the yarn would be, because I had it in a saran wrap, not a bowl. I had it in the bowl, but I had it in saran wrap to cover it. And when I picked it up, it burned my hand and I dropped it, and the colors started bleeding together because it was something I was trying to make, one part something, another part something else, but it had about 6 colors in there, and they just started, you know, growing together and multiplying, and I was trying to get it out of the hot cellophane. It wound up being a really beautiful skein of yarn, which I never could replicate because that was that was a true accident, you know, it was an accident. But after that, I was like, huh, okay, let's see this. How do you do that? So then I started going and buying every book I could find on color theory. Then I went to my university, which is Virginia Commonwealth University, because I realized I have a degree from a school that's an art foundation school. So art is their major. And I thought everything I need is probably at the school.
Right.
So I sat in the library for about 3 weekends in a row, just sitting there, taking notes, writing things, looking at color theories, trying to understand applications, you know, as it did from paste application to liquid and other things. And then I found out that there were actual classes you could take. I was done at that point. I was like, there's classes. I don't have to do this. So my first class was the Redding method, and she's in California. I want to say Natalie Redding is her name. I may be getting that wrong, but she is a member of the Redding hair color family that does the dyes, and she teaches dye classes and spinning and quite a few other things. And she travels all over the world teaching dye class. And I took my first class with her online. And as the class progressed, it was, I want to say 4 or 5 weeks. We did it twice a week online, but it was like video Zoom like this, and everyone was present. The young lady that was assisting her said, now that you've dyed your skeins, we were all working on different samples and coloration. She said, we want to take your picture and put it on the website as for the students to see. And I was like, why? She said, it's very nice, Sheila. It's very nice. So they selected me and 2 other people. So that's where I was at with that. That is exactly where I was at with that.
Well, when you started dyeing, right? So the first experiment was an accident. Were you discouraged at any point to like, why am I even doing that? Like, I can just go and buy the yarn.
I never got discouraged. I never did. Every step was a walk closer to getting me to where I was today. I didn't understand the business side of it per se. So I made a lot of errors in the beginning. My price points weren't right. Some people had to show me some things. But I have a master's degree, and I had already taken business classes because my foray into the fiber world, where I had hoped to go further, was I had hoped to open a local yarn shop at one point in my life. So I took all of those, you know, educational classes and stuff about handling the business. But in dyeing the yarn, it was just, I mean, my house went from a few pots and pans to almost 20 to I bought my first portable steamer trays and things, and I was like, oh, there's stuff to buy. I bought the spinner, and then I find out, you know, how to buy the yarn in bulk as far as ordering and identifying which companies and understanding the different compositions and weights and the description of what I wanted to be plied together and all the terms. And I've been hooked ever since. I was never frustrated. And I'm very fortunate that I had one son, and he's very self-sufficient, and he has 3 grandchildren. So I had disposable income at my hand that I was like, I probably spent way more money in the beginning than I should have, or that a lot of people are able to when they start. But for me, it was like, okay, just do this until I get it to where I'm comfortable. And then I started off in a farmer's market. I did my first farmer's market, and there were parts of that I knew I didn't care for, but it was fun. But I knew that there had to be more than just a farmer's market. I knew people like, you know, the large places, that they were not in a farmer's market, and I knew that I bought from them at vending events. I just didn't know how to get into them.
Right. Well, was it difficult to discover like how to market yourself? Was there like any information that people were willing to share, or was it the same thing like going through like searching Google for tips and tricks?
Well, one of the things that I noticed, like I said, I've been doing this now since 2016, almost 7 years, or 2015. I don't remember which one I started at. I realized because I had been a knitter for many, many years. I had been to Maryland Sheep and Wool, and I had only been to one retreat, but I had been to other fiber festivals, Shenandoah, what have you. And I noticed that there was a marketable amount, disparaging amount of African Americans lacking at all of those events. There was, I think, Karita Collins. No, I can't even say that because for the longest, I didn't know Neighborhood Fiber was owned by Karita Collins. So I had seen maybe one other African American, and that was it. So I went on to Facebook and started searching just African American dyers because I wasn't in any knitting groups online other than my local one. And I was the only, there was one other African American, but she didn't know anything either. So the first person I met that helped me, I want to say, was Diane Levy of Lady Dye Yarns. She talked to me, gave me some information about the business, because she had been in business 3 to 4 years when I first started, because she's now at 10 years. So 3 to 4 years. And she gave me some information. Then I met Adela Coben, Lola Bin Yarns, and she helped me a lot. But at that time frame, she helped me some, but we became closer together as friends. She and I started almost the same exact time. So she used to say, Sheila, I'm learning myself. But what she was able to share was important to me. I then met Brenshiva Boone of Snurb out of, she's moved. Her husband was military, and I want to say they were in Oklahoma or somewhere. And I met her not specifically because of dying, but she had had a storm damage to her house. And she was rehabbing her house and showing the process on Facebook. And she had the most beautiful craft room I had ever seen. It was just, the wheels, the yarn was set, the colors, the sewing, the quilting, everything. It was beautiful. And she was laying it out with the colors, and people were giving advice on whatever, and laying the floor. And then I found out that she owned a dye company, but I didn't know. I was enamored with the beauty of her house. She's got a beautiful eye. Well, she helped me by giving some information on Facebook to someone else, because I, clicked like on her page. She let me follow her. I asked her a couple questions, but not many. I don't know if she had just started or not, but the teaching aspect of not just dyeing, but her quilting and stuff, and her spinning was, I think, more her focus at that time frame. But someone asked her a series of questions that may not have been popular, I want to say. It was someone, I don't know who the person was, I honestly don't, but they were asking her specific questions about her process of how she obtained a color. And at one post, she said, that's not really something I'm going to share with people. She's a dyer. And I'm like, no, I wouldn't answer that question. The person then continued to ask more questions. Well, how did you get the blue to do this? And what do you do? And what's your heat? And how much dye stock are you using? And how much time and how much water? And the person kept asking. So she sat down, because she's an eloquent writer. She very, very good writer. She sat down and wrote, I don't know, a page. And the emphasis of the page was, whatever you're going to do that you want to do, you should pour into yourself, get some education, read everything, and then proceed. But what you shouldn't do is ask someone to give up their time, talent, and energy to empower you.
Right.
And then she gave links to classes. where you could, and books that you could read. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is some good information. And so I then started traveling and taking class. I bought every book she recommended.
Well, when somebody new approaches you, right? Like if somebody came to you and said, "Well, I'm thinking of also dyeing yarn," would you advise them to get into that business? Do you think it's oversaturated market, or do you think there is place for everybody's creativity in it?
I would first of all ask them why they want to get into this business, and try to really tune in to their reasoning why. If their reasoning is because they have seen what Gigi has done, what Adela has done, what I have done, I might would push them in a different direction, because this is a different time than when we started. And it's going to be a little bit harder to make a brand in your name. But if their desire is not money based and notoriety based, but it's based on the fact that they really love this and they're not trying to feed their family off of it initially, I would give them some of the information that Brent Shiva shared with me. And I would also let them know that this industry has become oversaturated. But with so many things, life ebbs and flows. We've seen a lot of people that have entered in the last 4 years, and now with the cost of goods going up, the cost of gas going up, travel, COVID, there have been a lot of people that have not been able to weather these difficult times.
How was
So,
COVID for you?
absolutely amazing. So, work-wise, amazing, amazing. I did what everyone else did. I went home when they said we didn't have to work, because I worked for the federal government. And they told us, the proverbial story that we're going to be home for 2 weeks. And I thought we were going to be home. So I put on my pajamas and put my knitting in my lap and thought, I'm going to watch Netflix. I'm going to do Facebook, and I'm going to work on my sweater. I was working on, some project. Well, time went on, and we were at week 3, week 4. And the 2 young ladies that work with me, one of them is in the medical profession, Michelle Coffey. So she was working nonstop. And I hadn't seen her because of that. And I was very concerned about her. The other young lady, Renee, could not come out due to her asthma. So she was, sequestered at home, not going around anybody. But I started getting calls from people. I would be online on Facebook, and they were like, Sheila, do you have yarn? I was like, yeah. Are you going to put any on your website? Are you going to update it? And I went, do you want yarn? Yes, we want yarn. Oh, okay. So I went in by myself and updated my website. 48 hours later, the website was clean. Everything sold. And I went, wait a minute, what just happened? And I realized we're all at home, and we're in need of mind focusing enjoyment. So I came back in and started dyeing. Then the Zoom or the virtual trade shows were ramping up. People were shifting left, pivoting in their businesses, trying to figure out what to do because they were canceled. All my shows have been canceled. And I started getting, messages, Sheila, join the virtual, please. We're going to work these bugs out and do this. Then I realized that Zoom was available. So I signed up for a Zoom account for my business. And I thought, I'll talk to my few friends that are at home, and we'll sit and chat. So I put a little post out and said, come join me for, Urban Girl Yarn Friday. Yeah, it was Friday morning Zoom from 10 to 12. Well, it got a little boisterous because we would talk all over each other. There was cats and dogs in the Zoom. There were kids running through, husbands, wives, pots and pans. You couldn't hear. We didn't know how to, make people not talk. But we were having a good time. But it was getting a little bit too energetic for me. I was like, this is not calm for me. I need calm knitting. I need something. So I thought about, I know people, I know a couple people. So I invited, I don't even know who was my first person. I know Tanis was second. Tanis, I think she was second, but I invited one of the designers that I knew to come on my Zoom, talk about how she became a designer for 1 hour. I would ask her questions. And then I said, we'll do a giveaway, skein of yarn, a free pattern, and then people can ask you questions. People enjoyed it. And it was a pin dropping. It was quiet. All the needles were clicking. Everyone was listening to the information. They were waiting to jump in at the end because I had given specific instructions that you will not interrupt me and the designer. I said, but when I say I'm done, you raise, back then there was no raising of the hand. I said, just raise your physical hand and I will click you in and you can ask a question. Well, we went from 20 to, I don't remember who was the last person, but the person before my last video was the grocery girls out of Canada. It was 94 people on that Zoom from all over the world. When they came on, as the numbers started rolling, I had told the grocery girls not to give me like 10 minutes to get everybody settled, because I had gotten a lot of messages saying people wanted to attend and was there enough room? And I was like, yeah, I got 100 people Zoom. So when they got settled, I told everyone, I said, I need you all to, one at a time, say your name, say where you're from, click your mic off so that you know how to come on and come off. Well, as people were rolling through, Michelle Coffey was in the studio with me and I was sitting in one end, she was sitting on the other on the Zoom. And we were staring at each other in absolute awe. We were like, wait, you're from Tanzania? You're from Germany? You're from Spain? You're from Portugal? You're everywhere. And it was amazing. So we wound up giving a lot of gifts away, a discount coupon to everybody and other things. And then I got a little tired, so I stopped it. And I told everyone, I said, I need a break. I just need some me time. I said, this is every Friday of my life right now, and I need some me time. But we tried to start it back up, but as you know, I've my son recently passed, and I don't think I'm going to have the energy right now to do it. So I'm going to wait a couple months, and I may start back because I had people lined up in the industry to do that for me.
What's the community of knitters like for you? Like, do you feel like they support you when you need that support? Do you feel that they are your family?
Pretty much so. There's always somebody that's not supportive, but overall, I have two knitting circles that I go toward the most. The one of them I thought I was going to tonight, but I realized this is our yarn crawl in this area, so I don't think we're having knit night because I think they're still open for the yarn crawl. But I have Stacy, who's the owner of Center of the Yarniverse, who's been amazing. Her daughter comes over and I give her teenager money, I call it, and she cleans and does inventory and just quietly comes in and just touches all the yarn and does everything I need whenever I need that time frame when she's out of school. There's Debbie Floyd, who owns Dances with Wool, and the knitting group there is my home base primarily. And the ladies have been wonderful. When I was sick, during the death of my son, we're always there for the birth of the kids and somebody's job or anything, the retirements, all the joy, the babies, the just all the good stuff. It's been interesting. It's a community unto itself.
Let's talk a little bit about your military career. Do you think it helps you with running the business now, all that discipline, all that perfect timing for everything? Do you feel like it has influence on you running this business now?
The fact that you think I have perfect timing is amazing. Because I don't. I do not. And the military did not give me perfect timing. In fact, I was always on my own time in the military, unbeknownst to many people, and it used to drive them crazy that I came to work almost when I wanted to. I left when I wanted to. They never understood that, but I guess I was always just a little bit different in the fields that I was in. I think the military has taught me to how to set a goal and go toward it, and when it fails, to adapt. Because in everything in life, failure should teach you something. It really should. And for a lot of people, they didn't learn or don't have that ability to bounce back from a failure, or take an assessment of it and see what the reasoning was, and pivot. My friend Reyes Cannon says you take a left turn and then you wind up where you need to be. If not, take another left and you'll get there sooner or later. The military, I think, taught me that. It taught me how to just set the end goal, along with the fact that I have a master's degree in urban regional planning, which is policy development. So I spent a lot of time writing papers and editing things and looking at the outcome and how do I get to the desired outcome that I want, whether or not it was with my federal job or with my business. Each year, I apply the Kim Russo principle, I guess I can call it. Kim dyes yarn. And she told me one time, every year I try to set a goal higher than last year. And I thought, that's absolutely the truth. You have to have somewhere to go in order to keep you from being stagnant, in order to challenge you, in order to elevate you. So my goal was achieved this year by my first appearance at Maryland Sheep and Wool Festival. It was amazing. I'm also going to H&H Americas in June. That will be my second biggest one. I have not set my goal yet for next year, but I believe when I think about it, one of the things I want to do is I want my dyeing classes to be online. That's one of my goals, that I want to start teaching monthly, quarterly, what have you, dye classes, and make sure that I can put them on the road and go places and teach dye classes.
Well, how much time do you spend thinking about your goals and your future and your dreams versus like hustling and actually dyeing and like working on orders and all that stuff?
For me, it's not a weighted equation. I do way too much. Always have. I do way too much. I don't really know how to rest, and I struggle with that, and I have to place things and people around me that tell me, go to bed, because I'll stay up thinking and writing and doing things. Or they'll tell me, have you had a Saturday off? So now I try to build every Sunday or every other Sunday, unless I'm ramping up for an event. I make myself go for a walk, and I go to my favorite coffee shop and try not to put my computer in front of me and do studio work. You know, if I'm going to be on the computer, it's like, let's do something for your house. Let's do whatever. It's a constant, with the shows that I'm doing this year are quite large. But the shows last year and the year before in COVID, even though they were not as large, they cost me the same amount of energy because I had to learn new skills. I had to learn how to do the Zooms, learn how to do the photography, and set up the cameras and the different stages of the mics and all those different types of things. And that was just as daunting, sometimes more, than dyeing the yarn. I was like, I just want to go back in the studio and dye the yarn. But now I got to get dressed. I got to make sure that you can hear me, see the yarn, see it in its true color, be able to have the broadcast on, have the Wi-Fi. You saw how hard I tried to change the camera. I don't have skills like that. I don't have computer skills. So I have outsourced a couple of the skills that's required for the business. Not all of them. I just can't do all of them.
Is it difficult for you to like relinquish control and trust other people with some of the tasks?
Yes, dying. dyeing the yarn. I can trust you with almost everything but that. But I also don't have anybody with me that wants to dye yarn. So I've got a very eclectic group that helps me, and it's been wonderful. But Michelle likes to spend her time here, she says, petting the babies, looking at all the beautiful colors, and relaxing after a stressful day at the hospital, because she handles pediatric respiratory care, and she's also on the helicopter. Renee just says it wasn't her joy. And I have Ann Harowitz, who I was pushing toward that way, but she got married and her baby is due June the 6th. So for me, the dyeing is what I want to stay at. But all the people that help me, all of them have said that their goal is to free me up from all the other tasks so that I can stay in the kitchen.
Well, let's talk about dyeing yarn. So I noticed, like, every time I talk to yarn dyers, there is basically like two categories. There are some people who are like very technical about dyeing yarn. They scientists, more than artists. They see themselves as like chemists almost. They know they can always match exactly the dye lot to the dye lot. They can replicate the color exactly. And then there are people who like almost always do like one kind of color and they cannot replicate it for the life of them, right? It's just like artistic vision, this is what happens. And of course, there is something in between where, you know, people try both ways, right? Where do you see yourself on that spectrum?
Probably in the middle. One of the things that I've always been good at is the science part, the math, the numbers, and I like it a lot. But I also know it doesn't free me up to be creative. So I try to balance it by writing everything down, which sometimes that's my biggest problem. My handwriting is terrible. It's absolutely terrible. It's atrocious. So I had to learn and come up with an electronic means in order to capture my dye formulas and, you know, test them and do other things. The replication of it, I am of the school of thought that you really can never replicate a color exactly. It's hard. And most people say they can, but they really don't. Too many variables are in place, too many variables, including the weather, the pH in the water, the time of day you dyed, how you felt, how much you moved the yarn, how much you didn't move the yarn. So it comes close, but I always tell people that's why you need to alternate the skeins, because the pH balance in the water will throw that color off. I don't care if you've done it 100 times. If it's not checked exactly to the whatever nth, and I don't do a lot of that testing. I don't like it. It's blocks my creativity. So once I set the color, if it starts switching and changing, I will eliminate it or go with it and say, okay, this is going to be a new colorway because now it wants to act up. Because as we get the acid dyes and natural dyes, there's too many factors in there. Right now, some of the distributors of the acid dyes, they can't get certain colors. So you can't replicate something that you can't get again.
How many colors do you produce? Like, is there a certain amount or is it always evolving?
It's based on my money, really. However much money I have, however much wool I have, whatever shows I'm going to. Right now, I'm sitting, I think I'm sitting at about 300 colorways on my website or more. I've never counted them and they're not numbered, but they're, you know, I try to retire certain colors when I do. If I sit down and do the analytics on the computer and I see that a color is not moving and it's been here in the shop too long, I try to retire it and go, okay, that color was only liked by me, but there have been colorways that I have retired. I've taken to a show and everybody bought it. And then I know that some of that's because I couldn't capture it in photography. So you could not see what would draw your eye to it. It just would not photograph. And then I keep it, then I've had to put it back in the lineup, because then I'm like, okay, people want this colorway, even though now they see what it's meant to be.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you feel like anytime there is some sort of issue, you question yourself, that you think it's your fault somehow, like either not showing the color correctly or not describing it the right way or not marketing it? Do you always take the blame on yourself?
I don't know about always, but seeing that I'm the dyer, I guess I am the one that's responsible for it. But the photography was a different level too that I had to learn to achieve. I I played with 35 millimeter camera for a while, didn't quite get it. I bought a couple light boxes, bought equipment and backgrounds and stuff. And a lot of times the best photograph is the simplest one. I just take it outside, take a photograph, and it winds up sometimes being the truest, best color of it. But I do like to, zhuzh it up a little bit sometimes in the photography to make it better. But if it doesn't show, sometimes you just cannot see certain elements of transitions of color because of light, the way it's going to play off of it. So I can explain it, but it's until you see it, you may not get it.
Is there like specific color way that's very difficult to photograph, like more so than others?
Blues. A blue will turn to a green under a lens really quick. Blues always do because they have a hint of green in them. So certain blues, it's just really hard. Pinks, if they're not allowed, pink can be you won't see the subtleness of it. It will look more tan. So sometimes, it depends on the application of it, but I just do my best.
So like when you started, you bought that yarn on that website just to try. What's your yarn base now looks like?
I have 5 right now, I believe. I have fingering, a 90-10, a wool nylon, 90-10, and then I have a new fingering that's coming out that is a Siri wool blend. I have 2 DKs, a Yak superwash merino cashmere blend and 100% DK. And then I have a Surrey that is a DK weight also. That's 5. And I feel like I'm missing somebody. But I retired a worsted weight, and I'm looking to find another worsted weight. So I use it. So I don't want to get past 6 different weights of fiber.
What's your personal yarn stash looks like?
Less than 100 skeins.
Really?
Really? It's quite small. I don't even know if it's 50. My yarn stash doesn't normally contain my yarn. I don't, because my yarn is here in the studio. I don't have to put it in my house. My yarn stash is a yarn that I have purchased while I'm out traveling, or I'm at an event, or I know it's a new dyer and I want to support them and stuff. I'll go online and stuff. I have more project bags than I have yarn stash.
How much do you have time to knit, because you're so busy with running a business? Like, is knitting became something you do once a week, or is it every day a little bit?
It's so cyclical. It depends on what's going on. I'm retiring from the federal government in 1 July, so I hope to have more time to knit after that. But before COVID, in the middle of dyeing everything, I had to work my federal job, and my knitting time would normally be on the train on the way to work. Because that was a 2-hour ride there, a 2-hour ride back. So I at least got, an hour into each way, sometimes on my lunch, definitely on Saturday and Sundays. Now, I can't say it has increased because I'm more busy in the studio, because I just started working from home, and when I'm done, I walk in here and I start dyeing like just so I had to go in and put some stuff on. So I've got a lot of projects, and I'm trying to stop that, but I like starting projects too. I do. And I've got a couple people that knit samples for me, so they freed me up from that. So I try to do a lot of the knitting that just makes me happy, not because I've got to get it done for the studio. So that pushes me a little bit more. It's like, oh, let me go work on my shirt. Let me go work on my sweater because I know it's for me.
when I was interviewing Stephen West, I asked him a question because a lot of designers that I work with or I test for, they would sometimes come up with a design and they would be like, well, I wanted to make it bigger, but I'm, a little bit concerned about people needing to buy so much yarn for this project. So I'm keeping the shawl, let's say, 2 skeins instead of 4 skeins, right? And I asked him if he is concerned about that when he designs, because some of his projects can take like 10, 20 skeins, like when he does schlanket, or any of his shawls are like 5 skeins.
Yep.
Is it, and you mentioned also at the beginning that like when you started, you weren't on the right price point. Is it difficult for you to price your yarn? Do people ever question why is it priced so high? Or do you ask yourself why you're pricing it so low with all the amount of work that goes into it?
Well, I think my price point is sort of industry standard. I just did a rate increase that everyone's getting ready to see, but I did notify everyone that after Maryland Sheep and Wool that my price would go up because I have not increased my prices in 6 years. So I'm not feeling bad about that. It's been 6 years that I've held my prices. I did learn the formula of from business classes and other things as far as when you purchase wholesale and what your average market bearing cost is. So I feel like mine, and I've checked other people's, mine's right about where it needs to be. When I receive comments from people concerning the price of the item, I typically just don't address it because this is indie dyed yarn. It is done by my hand. It is my talent. It's my hard work. It's my time. And a machine doesn't do this. So you're paying for that. You're paying for the luxury of the yarn. You're paying for the individuality of it so that your colorway and your yarns are different than what you would get from, Joann's or Michael's. And I try never to dissuade someone from saying or believing that their Michael's yarns is just as good. If they believe that, I think they have a right to. But what I won't do is adjust my price. So I just tend to listen to them and I go, well, it's not on sale. You can wait for a sale. When the sale comes, by all means, buy all you want, but I won't be lowering this price. Now, the only exception to that rule is a really cute kid.
Well, how often do you do the sales, and like why would you do the sale?
I don't have a set schedule for them because for many years I didn't do a sale because I didn't have enough inventory to put on sale. Then I started doing charitable events first, and I would do a discount and donate some of the money to a project here in the area or something nationally, or when Black Lives Matters. And I'm, into quite a few things for Gay Pride, and we're going to have something coming up for Gay Pride soon. My first actual sale was a result of me clearing out stuff in the studio that had just taken over. Like I had stopped certain colorways, so I pulled them off and I would have 3 skeins left and I would put them in the bin. Or if I dyed something red, it wasn't the dark enough red, but it was still beautiful, but it was lighter than the other reds. So I put it in a bin. And I thought there's nothing wrong with any of this. The yarns that had a problem, I used to cut them up and make pom-poms out of them. I've given them to a couple kids to play with and learn to crochet with and stuff. So I did a major 50% off sale recently that I won't be doing again for a while because I messed up some of it as far as my computer, and it allowed people to order things 2 and 3 times when they were one of a kind.
Well, you mentioned at the beginning that you had this idea of maybe at some point becoming a store owner for a yarn store.
No, I said I did. I did. I no longer want to do that. I did. That was my first. I no longer want to own the shop. People keep trying to get me to open a shop, and I keep telling them no.
Well, no, what about it was attracting you back then, and what changed your mind?
It was the yarn. It was the community. I had like I said, I had a dress design shop, and I loved working with people. I don't want to do that. I want to dye yarn. I want to dye yarn. I don't want to. It's a lot of work to own a local yarn shop. And we've got two that are wonderful right here. I think we have three. I don't know. I only go to two of them, but we have three. Yeah. So that's enough for me. It's like I'm good. I'm good. I don't want to
What's
do it.
your dream for this year? Like, are you living your dream? Are you working how you wanna? You dyeing the colors that you want, or do you see something else in your future that you aiming towards to?
The only thing I'm aiming toward is the teaching of the classes for this year. Well, this year and next year. I am almost booked for this year. I'm going to add a couple more trunk shows. I have a new website that's being launched this week. I switched from one web provider to another one. And with that, I'm going to be able to increase my wholesale accounts. And people will be able to log on to my site and actually do that. So I'm hoping to ramp up my wholesale accounts. And going to H&H will definitely catapult my wholesales orders and stuff. And my other goal for this year is to hire a part-time person that's set with a schedule along with me, because the people that work for me right now, they give me the hours as they can in between their lives. I want somebody that I can say, you need to be here from 12 to 4, 3 days a week. And that way I know they're there and doing what I need.
Well, I love your colors. I love seeing your Instagram
Thank you.
posts and seeing,
Thank you.
Stuff. And I'm hoping you're gonna end up at Rhinebeck soon also, because I'm planning to go there. So maybe we'll find the
I'll be
chance.
there. I'll be there at Cakapalooza this year. On the outskirts. I didn't want to do Wool Untangled. I want to do Cakapalooza. I got an invite to that. She seems very nice. So I've already paid for that and obligated. And I think we're going to catch the train up and ship all this stuff as much as possible. And then I'm going to get 11 hours of knitting on the train.
Sounds lovely. Well, I hope I'll see you there then. I'll try to find you there.
Okay. And please tag me in so I can watch the video when you edit it and stuff.
I will do, absolutely. And I'll put all the links to you and your online store here under the video so people can find you.
Thank you so much. It was lovely. I appreciate your patience. Thank you so much.
Thank you.